Alrighty, guys, so before we get started with the review, I gotta take attendance. Ken.
Here.
Okay. Ken.
Here.
Alright, Barbie.
Here.
Barbie.
Here.
Oh, forget it. I can't keep track of who's who. Let's just start the video. What's going on, everyone? James here with another real review, and today we're talking all about Barbie. Yes, that's right, guys. Barbie is finally here, and if you missed it, I dropped my out-of-theater reaction last night, so you probably have a decent idea of what I think of this movie, and trust me, I have some amazing feelings about this film. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to make it clear that this review was recorded during the 2023 WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes, so without the labor of the writers and actors currently on strike, the movie here would not exist. And there are some incredibly talented women and men behind Barbie to make it as great as it was. So, hey, I mean, might as well give them all the love and respect that they deserve. So, this film, if you're unfamiliar with it, well, it's going to hit theaters this weekend, so you better become familiar with it fast. But I got you, I'll catch you up to speed. The film is directed by Greta Gerwig and written by Greta Gerwig herself and Noah Baumbach. Now, the film has a huge ensemble cast starring Margot Robbie as Barbie, Ryan Gosling as Ken, Issa, Kate McKinnon, Simu Liu, Will Ferrell, America Ferrera, and even Michael Cera. So yeah, there's a lot of amazing talent on display in this film, but if you're thinking, what the heck could a Barbie movie be about? Well, it's a pretty layered story, but simply put, Barbie suffers a crisis, an existential crisis that has her questioning the world she lives in, Barbie Land, and what is beyond. So, guys, trust me, they go deep emotionally in this movie. Now, before I dive into all of my positives, some of my negatives, and my final thoughts, if this is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I love talking about movies, TV, and all the news in between. So if you do too, go ahead and hit the big red button below and subscribe to the channel, tap on that bell, and hit the thumbs up button so you can see more reviews just like this. And let me know down below in the comments, where does Barbie rank for you this summer? Because right now, y'all know, my favorite summer movie is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. But Barbie's giving that movie a run for its money. Alrighty, y'all, so let's begin with the positives, and I'm going to break it down as simply as this. We're going to talk about the directing, the writing, and the acting. So let's begin right at the top with the directing by Greta Gerwig, because this is her biggest movie yet, and I believe it's her best film to date. Yeah, and I loved Lady Bird and Little Women, so the fact that this is above both of those films for me, that's huge, because I didn't expect to come away loving Barbie as much as I did. I wasn't really buying into the hype on purpose because I wanted to go in with tempered expectations so I didn't get disappointed, and I was all the better for it. It's incredibly well paced, and I do think Greta Gerwig was able to expertly handle all of the layers in this movie. And I can only imagine how difficult this movie was to direct. There's so many set and outfit changes in split seconds in the middle of scenes themselves, and then you have, well, down-to-earth conversations with stereotypical Barbie and musical numbers involving the Kens. There's so much happening, but the way Greta Gerwig is able to package this all together and display her clear vision for this film makes this experience so much more immersive. But I have to give huge props to her production designer, Sarah Greenwood, and her costume designer, Jacqueline Duran, who also worked on The Batman, my #1 film of last year. But both of these incredible talents just made this movie feel more alive. Like, the minute the movie starts, I actually feel like I was living in that world. I was in Barbie Land with everyone else, with all the different Barbies, Kens, and Alan. But man, this movie is just gonna take you and just keep you within its world. And it's just an incredibly beautiful film visually, and the way it's directed also lends itself to be one of the most beautiful films emotionally. Greta Gerwig really was the perfect choice to direct this movie, and it's due in large part to how she understands how to balance fun and social commentary in the best way possible, which leads me to the writing in Barbie. So, like I mentioned at the top, the script is written by Greta Gerwig and her partner and fellow director and writer, Noah Baumbach. I really do enjoy Noah Baumbach's work, and I love, of course, Greta Gerwig's writing, so right out the gate, I can confidently say that this is one of the most complex scripts of the year. What? But it's also going to be the funniest movie of the year. There's clever writing, humor, and well-timed jokes around almost every corner. So, of course, this movie's gonna lend itself well to a rewatch because I'm sure there are little mannerisms or cues and scenes that even I missed. And Barbie doesn't fall victim to the male gaze, which is a huge plus because there are a lot of movies that, preach a feminine cast, a cast that will, tell a story that is supposed to be empowering women, and it's directed by a man, it's written by a man, and it has that male gaze. But in Barbie, it's quite the opposite. Even though Noah Baumbach is one of the two screenwriters here, this is largely a movie that will include a lot of relatable moments for women on a grounded level, and sometimes, of course, in the over-the-top way that Barbie really is. But this movie really did impact a lot of women in the screening that I went to. And the story deserves to be told in this way. It has to be relatable for women. And as a man, there were moments that were not written for me, and I think that's okay. I just love how much Greta Gerwig dives into the commentary on what women experience on a day-to-day basis, and there's one actor that really hammers this message home, and that is America Ferrera. She has this monologue in the third act that was incredible. It was emotional, and it actually got a round of applause from her audience, even though I feel a certain way about clapping and getting the whole audience to applaud because then you miss important lines of dialogue, but you could tell that it resonated with a lot of people in the audience, and I think that's going to be the general consensus for audiences once this movie drops this weekend. And unfortunately, I've already seen comments from men on how this movie is too demeaning towards men or too feminist. Well, too bad, honestly, because this movie was emotionally layered and it was told in the way it needed to be told for it to be an effective film. And if it was told any other way, if they were limiting themselves on how far they'll go, then I think that it would have hindered the final product. But man, this movie was written exactly how it should have been. And dare I say that this script deserves to be nominated for awards? Yeah, it really does. So now let's transition over to the acting department because, oh my gosh, this ensemble cast is just amazing. I mean, on paper, the talent is there. Let me just run down the list again for you guys. Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling, Issa, Simu, Liu, Helen Mirren, America Ferrera, Will Ferrell. The list goes on. And what I love is that each of these actors have so much chemistry with one another, and it's really felt and it radiates off the screen. But let's begin with Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, our Barbie and Ken. Now, these two were destined to be in a movie together like this, and their ability to play off of one another works. Margot Robbie, it goes without saying that she's a great actor. She's the screen presence that she has in this film and in many other works that she's had, it's just incredible. But here in Barbie, there's a certain way that she's able to convey the message of being stereotypical Barbie and then being existential crisis Barbie. that they never gave that name to her, but it really is an incredibly well thought out performance. You can tell that she really dove into the role and didn't take one beat off. Margot Robbie is funny, she's grounded, she's emotionally complex, and she's able to really bring this movie to a human relatable level that got me kind of emotional in the second half. And then there's her co-star Ryan Gosling, who's one of my favorite actors in Hollywood, and he has been since I first saw him in Remember the Titans and The Notebook. But here in Barbie, he has this excellent comedic timing to him, and he's just naturally funny. And I knew he could dive into more of this comedic space because in The Other Guys, he was excellent in that film, which deserves a sequel. But oh my goodness, the mixture of comedy and drama with his performance as Ken was exactly what this film needed. There are moments that you feel for him, and then there are other moments where you're just mad at him, but that was the intention of the way they wrote this character and how he was able to perform. There's even a musical number with Ken, and Ryan Gosling again proves that he's one of the most versatile actors in Hollywood. And I love how much depth they gave Ken's story here, which includes fawning over Barbie, naturally, learning about patriarchy, and being challenged in Barbie Land. At first I thought, how is this going to work with Ryan Gosling as Ken? It's going to feel too kooky. But instead, man, he pulls it off. and he does so excellently. But outside of our two leads, there are a couple of actors I want to highlight that stole scenes on their own and surprised me with how well they were able to stand out from the crowd. Let's begin with America Ferrera. Now, admittedly, I did not watch Ugly Betty growing up, which I was grilled for after the screening, but oh my gosh, this actor, America Ferrera, just take a bow. Oh my goodness, her performance was incredible. She plays Gloria, a character that is very complex. She's a human who is struggling with balancing being a better mother, working at a male-dominated toy company, of course, Mattel, and trying to survive a tough season of life emotionally. She has a daughter in this film named Sammy, I believe, and there's a story there, a subplot that is so endearing, and it really is something that I implore you just stick with it, because you think it goes in a generic direction, but instead it actually goes off in a direction that aids the story overall. It's not distracting, but America Ferrera really is such an impactful performer in this movie. She gives this monologue, like I mentioned earlier in the third act, that just, it was incredible. But she is a character that I think most audiences will relate to on a human level. I also didn't expect her to be the anchor for the majority of the second half of this film, and well, hey, Barbie is better for it. So the other performer that I want to mention here, Michael Cera. He plays Alan, a rejected Ken type of doll, but Michael Cera just made me cackle at times. He's always been hilarious to me, but as Alan, he's actually stealing scenes away and taking some of that spotlight, in a good way though, and they don't overuse his character either, because at first I got nervous. I thought, okay, this is funny, but what if they overdo it with the awkward type of humor and they don't effectively deliver jokes? Instead, all of his scenes were hilarious to me. The way the Barbies and the Kens react to Alan is hilarious. It's just such a well done performance, and he really was one of those scene stealers for me. Now, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the rest of the ensemble cast. They do deserve a shout out, so here are some more notable performances. You have Kate McKinnon as Weird Barbie, and emphasis on the weird at first, but my goodness, she's one character that you will not be split on. She is so funny, and at times you're like, oh my gosh, this is making me a little sad, and then it's bittersweet, and then it's heartwarming. So her performance really just was able to encapsulate all of those emotions. Simu as Ken, dare I say, he has more range in this performance than he had in Shang-Chi, and I loved Shang-Chi and what he did in that film, but here as Ken, I don't know, he just was able to capitalize more, I think, on the performance. He was having so much fun, and you could tell. And then there's Issa as President Barbie. She has some of the funniest scenes in the movie and is just naturally hilarious. I just don't know what to say about Issa. She's just one of the best working comedic actors and talents in Hollywood, but she's also just so darn effective as President Barbie. Then you have Rhea Perlman as, well, I won't say who. And lastly here, Helen Mirren as the narrator. She's great and has an amazing liner in the second half of this movie about Margot Robbie. Keep your ears open for it. It's great. But truly, the entire cast from top to bottom, so many standouts. I mean, that list I just gave you, that mini list, probably will be added to once I see it again on rewatch, but this ensemble cast is just incredible. If there was an award for best ensemble cast, it very well might go to Barbie by the end of the year. Now let's round out my positive section with just talking about the technical elements of Barbie, the music, the editing, and the cinematography. This movie on a technical level really is impressive, you guys. I was shocked by how much I loved so many of these elements of the film. The music here, the soundtrack is great. You know, I mean, I'm not a fan of the Nicki Minaj and Ice Spice song too much. I mean, it's catchy, but, you know, I just genuinely wouldn't listen to it outside of the film. But there is a Lizzo song in here that I need because it was great, hilarious, it was a vibe, and I do love how in the movie Lizzo's lyrics change with what's happening on screen. You'll have to see it to know what I'm talking about. But the score, outside of the soundtrack of course, is also really effective. Mark Ronson and Andrew Wyatt fill in the shoes of the composers here on this film, and they create this score that is a lot of things, but it has to be because you have to match so many different elements of Barbie. There are pop elements, retro vibes, serious undertones, and more that contribute to what makes this movie so immersive. And shout out to the sound design department because There are some things here that like you just hear like little musical cues, little sound cues that just add even more fun to this movie. And then there's the editing. Shout out to Nick Hoy, I hope I pronounced that properly, who edits the heck out of this film. There are seamless transitions in this movie from scene to scene, sometimes within scenes, that really kind of add to how well executed and delivered Barbie is. Now, the movie itself will float in and out of different sets and different costumes, and you'll just notice there's so much going on at once, and at times I thought, this is gonna be hard to keep up with for almost 2 hours, right? Well, I was wrong. Instead, it was a very clean experience. I didn't see anything or notice anything that was wrong with the editing, and sometimes the best editing is the editing you don't notice. So I loved how the editing just added to this great experience. And lastly, I do want to talk about the cinematography by Rodrigo Prieto. I hope I pronounced that again properly, but man, Rodrigo, man, I don't know. I did not expect this movie to look as beautiful as it did. There are vibrant pinks, there are amazing hues and tones, and then there are, some more dull colors when the movie gets super grounded and sad. And then there's this one scene at the end of the film between Barbie and another character I'm not going to mention because you need to see it fresh for yourself. That was so darn emotional, and it's because of the way it was filmed, framed, and blocked. Oh my gosh, you guys, are you kidding me? I could not believe that something so simple ended up being something that was the most effective in this movie. It was just such a beautiful scene, and it was all the better because of the cinematography. So yeah, kudos to the technical geniuses that worked on this movie. So with that being said though, there are some negatives in this movie. Now, there aren't many, and luckily at least I noticed the negatives, but I didn't necessarily think they lingered. So the first negative I have here is that the film tends to get a little sluggish at the beginning of the second act because there's so much charm and allure after that first act. You feel great after the first 30 minutes of this movie, that when it starts to get into another phase, you notice that the movie's just a little bit slower. And then eventually when Barbie meets Weird Barbie, that's when the film turns into a second gear and you think, oh boy, here we go, we're going on a whole new adventure. And it was lovely. And like in most movies that swing for the fences with humor, not every joke landed in this film, and those that didn't land are really felt. But that doesn't happen more than twice, I want to say, maybe even 3 times, and it does come from a lot of the secondary characters, so there are minor moments where I thought, doesn't really hit for me. But on the other hand, there are some instances where the cameo surprised the heck out of me. So yeah, there's some back and forth at times, but for the most part the humor is excellent and it still gets an A+ for me. I just know that there are some scenes where I thought the humor it wasn't so effective, but again, it's not distracting enough for it to be what drags this film down, because honestly, and this is where we'll get into my final thoughts, nothing in this movie dragged it down for me. This is such a great summer experience, and it's one that begs to be seen on the big screen. Barbie is full of heart, humor, and a layered story that's going to be relatable for teenagers and adults. Women and men will find ways to enjoy this film. And I do think, like I mentioned earlier, it's Greta Gerwig's best film yet. It's also her biggest. There's so much to this film. The scale is huge, and that's why seeing it on the big screen worked. It was beautifully shot. The colors were amazing. The acting was unreal, honestly, and there were moments where I was so immersed in the movie that I forgot what time it was. I didn't care. I was like, I'm so into this, and that's why for me, Barbie, as of now, as of today, it's in my top 3 films of the year. Now, is it the best summer movie of the year? I still give that, to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse just a little bit, but I'm gonna be honest, y'all. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse was a 5 out of 5 for me. Barbie's a 4.5 out of 5. Guys, this movie's incredible. It's one of the biggest surprises of the year, and I just cannot believe I love this movie as much as I do. So yes, Barbie's a must-see. Now, if you're a parent wondering, is this movie something I can take my young daughter or young son to? Well, listen, if they're under 13, you might want to be a little careful because there are some jokes and some things that they show that might not actually sit well with you as a parent. But if they're 13 years or older, I think that they'll be able to handle most of this. It's just, again, such a fun movie, and everyone in my audience loved it. I loved it. It's just one of the best experiences of the year. So there you have it, y'all. That's my real review of Barbie. Thanks so much for sticking with me and hearing all of my positives and negatives and honestly what makes this movie one of the best of the year. But let me know down below in the comments if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. It's okay too, just don't be a troll. And hey, if you haven't already, hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, y'all. You made it this far, join the real family, and hit the thumbs up button again if you want to see more reviews and videos just like this. Alrighty, y'all. Well, thanks again for sticking with me. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening. Now I want to find 2 pairs of sunglasses, you know, one for me and, well, I guess one for me. Okay.